Hello, Helen here. Welcome to my channel. Today's card I'm going to be using another one of the Ultra stencils that I purchased. This one's a leaf one and it's rather lovely. And I've just discovered these Catherine Pooler ink pads and bought myself a few of them just to try. They are really great because they've got real saturation of colour and really nice bright colours. So I got a series of the mauve ones, and I'm going to use a couple of those today. So I'm starting off with a piece of card that's just slightly bigger than my card base, and I'm sticking that down onto a board, and then I'll stick the stencil down just so that I can do the blending without it moving at all. I prefer to have a nice solid base, and I'm going to use the lightest colour and start with that. Now with the blending tool I'm just going to use the lightest of the three mauves that I bought called Sweet 16, and I'm just going to blend the outside of the stencil in towards about the middle of it, and then I'll swap over and use the pixie dust to do the centre, and I'll just blend the two together. Now please excuse the lighting in this video, it's absolutely bucketing down outside and was really dark, and so I had to put the lights on, and it's not the best, I have to say, so sorry about that. So that's the first layer done. Now I'm going to lift the stencil and I'm going to put it back on, slightly twisted around so that the leaves fit in between the leaves that I've just done, and I'll stick the tape back down on that, and then I'll stencil the pixie dust towards the top, and then Flirty Fuchsia, which is the darkest of the colours I've got, into the centre. And it should just make a little bit of a gradient sort of pattern of the stencil. I think it turns out quite nice. Now that I've finished that layer, I can peel it off, and I'll just clean the stencil down. You'll notice I've got a couple of marks where I've overlapped the stencil a little bit, but that won't matter in this case because I'm going to be cutting a shape out of that stenciling. I'm going to pop that board with the stencil aside while I do some stamping of a flower and a leaf that I'm going to put in the corner of my card. So I'm using this wallpaper art stamp set again, and as I've said in a previous video, the flowers are quite big, so I'm just going to use one flower and one leaf. I'm going to do the stamping on Bristol Strathmore smooth watercolour paper because I intend to do some watercolouring with the same inks that I've done the stenciling with. Well, I'm going to have a go at it. So I'll use that just so that it can take a bit more water. So I'll stamp that in Versamark ink, and then I'm going to put white embossing powder on that and then heat set that. The next thing I'm going to do, I've got some shape dies here. Now you really could use any shape for this, just a pleasing shape that you like. You could just do square, you could do oval, anything like that, just whatever you've got, but they need to be stacked so that you can do a frame that's just a little bit bigger than the shape that I'm going to cut the stencil out. So I'm going to just do the frame part first on a scrap piece of card. So I've got the largest of the set and I've got the next one down, and I'm going to eyeball the placement of that on my card, stick it down and cut it out with my cutting machine. And then with the smaller one, I'm going to be cutting the stencil out so that fits in to the center of that frame. And then with the larger die, I'm going to cut out a piece of craft foam, which is going to go back behind them all and hold it all together. So I hope that makes sense when you see me do it. So that's all the parts cut out. Now I'll just stick them all together. So the craft foam is going to go on the back. I'll glue the frame onto that, and then I'll put the cut out piece of the stencil into the centre of that, and it should all just look like it's a piece of stencil with the frame around it. And the foam at the back will just give a bit of dimension when I put it on the card, plus just hold the whole thing together. So while I get on with colouring my flower and my leaves, I'm just going to pop that stencil piece just underneath my craft mat, just so it presses it down a little bit and holds it all in place while the glue dries. Now I've seen on videos by Catherine Pooler that her inks are very good for watercolouring, so I thought I'd give it a go. I'm just going to put the pad on an acrylic block just to get a bit of ink onto that. Look at that colour, there's such saturation of colour, it's just beautiful. And I'm just going to use a paintbrush and some water, and I'll start off with each petal of the flower. I'm just going to put some water on the petals to start with. You need quite a bit of water, and then I'm just going to pick up a bit of the ink from the acrylic block and drop it into the water just at the base of the petal and let the water do all the work. It's a really simple way of watercolouring. It's more or less just letting it do its own thing. Turned out in a few petals that I didn't have quite enough water, so I've just added a bit more water up the top of the petals where the paints or the inks kind of just stopped, just to get it to flow a little bit better. But it's a very simple technique and quite fun. For painting the leaves, I haven't got a green in the Catherine Pooler inks, so I'm going to use one of the Altenew inks. It's called Forest Glades, so I'll just pop that on the acrylic block and do exactly the same thing. The ink moves just the same, it's just not quite as saturated as the Catherine Pooler inks. And while I've got the green set out, I'll use the black ink that's in that set and just do the very centre of the flower. I think it just needs a little bit of a deeper colour in the middle. Once my flowers are dry, I've fussy cut them out. I ended up cutting I think they're either leaves or berries from the part of the leaf stamp away, so that I just had the leaves. For the sentiment on the card, I need it to be fairly small, as the stencil part's going to be fairly big on the card. So I've got this Altenew stamp set called Birthday Greetings, and I'm just going to do the script writing at the bottom called Sending Birthday Hugs. So I'll do that with VersaFine Onyx black ink and then clear embossing powder, and then I'll be ready to put the card together. I can now put the card together. I'll put some double-sided tape on the craft foam on the back of the stencil and stick that down on the card. And then the parts of the flower and leaves that overhang that stencil, I will put some foam tape on. The rest I'll just glue, and that will sit onto the stencil, and that's the card finished. Now I just thought I'd better let you all know what I've been doing and why I've been a bit AWOL lately. I haven't been putting nearly as many videos as I'd like up because I've been working with my husband on a project where we've made a little shop on our property, and both him and I do vintage crafts, and my husband does upcycling furniture, and he also does ceramic hearts with paper napkins on the outside of them. He also paints bottles and plant pots and pitchers and jugs and all sorts of things like that. And I do soap and bath and body products, and also candles and home decor products, vintage boxes, and make little lavender bags and all sorts of other bits and pieces like that. So everything you can see in the video, me and my husband and also my daughter have either made from scratch or have upcycled from thrift shop finds and second-hand purchases, etc. We decided we'd put it all together and see whether other people are interested. So we've got a little shop that we call a Vintage Touch. This is as well as us having both full-time jobs, and we also built the cottage ourselves, so it's taken about 3-4 months to get that all built and painted and decorated and things. So it's been a big project, so that's why I haven't had much time to do videos lately, but we thought you'd be interested in seeing what I've been doing when I haven't been creating videos for all you guys to see. So hopefully you like it, and we'll see you next time for the next video. Bye for now.